Convening having arrived, the Senate will come to order. At this time, I'd like to ask all unauthorized persons to leave the chamber. Chair would like to recognize the distinguished and honorable Rules Chairman.
Mr. President, it's a gloomy, dreary day on the outside of this Capitol, but the men and women inside are ready for action to help the people of Georgia. A moment in history, very important. In 1856, the Keechee-Fahuney County in Georgia was renamed Webster County. Everybody's been interested in that. And today is National Pancake Day. The journal's been read and found to be correct.
Is there objection to dispensing with the reading of the journal? Hearing none, the reading of the journal is dispensed with. Is there objection to the confirmation of the journal? The chair hears none, and the journal is confirmed. All senators who have bills and resolutions, please bring them to the Secretary's desk at this time. Mr. Secretary, please read and reference bills and resolutions for the first time.
Senate Bill 135 by Senator Walker of the 20th and others, a bill we titled Enactment Chapter 9 of Title 34 of the OCGA relating to workers' compensation. This is to change certain provisions relating to workers' compensation administration and benefits.
Judiciary.
Senate Bill 136 by Senator Jones of the 25th and others, a bill we titled Enactment Chapter 10 of Title 15 of the OCGA relating to magistrate courts so as to remove statutory requirements for officers in the executive committee of the
Judiciary.
Senate Bill 137 by Senator Lucas of the 26th and others, a bill entitled Enactment Code Section 4286 of the OCGA relating to special license plates promoting and supporting certain beneficial projects.
Public safety.
Senate Bill 138 by Senator Martin of the 9th and others, a bill entitled Enactment the OCGA so as to provide certain benefits to disabled first responders, to amend Article 3 of Chapter 2 of Title 40 of the OCGA so as to provide for a free license plate for
Finance.
Senate Bill 139 by Senator Lucas of the 26th, a bill will be titled entitled An Act to Provide for the Restructuring of the Governments of the City of Macon, the City of Payne
State and local government.
Senate Bill 140 by Senator Harbison of the 15th and others, a bill will be titled Enactment Article 3, Chapter 13 of Title 45 of the OCGA relating to the World War I Centennial Commission. So as
Veterans.
Senate Bill 141 by Senator Tippins of the 37th, a bill will be titled Enactment and Act to reincorporate and provide a new charter for the City of Ackworth, approved February 17th.
State and local government.
Senate Bill 142 by Senator Walker of the 20th and others, a bill entitled Enactment Chapter 24, Title 33 of the OCGA, relating to insurance generally, so as to require that a statement...
Insurance and labor.
Senate Bill 143 by Senator Beach of the 21st and others, a bill entitled Enactment and Act known as the Metropolitan Atlanta Rapid Transit Authority Act of 1965, approved
Transportation.
Senate Bill 144 by Senator Anderson of the 24th and others, a bill entitled Enactment Chapter 11 of Title 48 of the OCGA, relating to taxes on tobacco products so as to provide for the issuance of special event tobacco
Regulated
permits.
industries.
Senate Bill 145 by Senator Harbin the 16th and others, a bill entitled Enactment Title 33 of the OCGA relating to insurance so as to require insurers to develop selection standards for provider participation.
Insurance and labor.
Senate Bill 146 by Senator Gins of the 47th and others, a bill entitled Enactment Title 3 of the OCGA relating to alcoholic beverages so as to provide that retail packaged liquor stores may conduct.
Economic development.
Senate Bill 147 by Senator Jones of the 10th and others, a bill entitled Enactment Article 4 of Chapter 5 of Title 21 of the OCGA relating to public officials' conduct and lobbyist disclosure so as to provide that it shall be illegal for an elected official of a local...
Ethics.
Senate Bill 148 by Senator Robertson of the 29th and others, a bill entitled Enactment Article 1 of Chapter 8 of Title 40 of the OCGA relating to general provisions regarding equipment of motor vehicles so as to revise provisions for safety belts.
Judiciary.
Senate Bill 149 by Senator Robertson of the 29th and others, a bill will be titled Enactment Article 1 of Chapter 2 of Title 40 of the OCGA relating to registration and licensing of motor vehicles generally so as to permit the owner
Public safety.
Senate Bill 150 by Senator Jordan the 6th and others, a bill will be titled Enactment in Title 16 and 19 of the OCGA relating to crimes and offenses into the domestic relations, respectively, so as to prohibit persons
Judiciary.
Senate Resolution 214 by Senator Heath the 31st and others, a resolution urging state agencies and departments to publish or deliver the reports to the General Assembly by electronic...
Government oversight.
Senate Resolution 215 by Senator Watson of the 1st and others, a resolution honoring the life of Patrol Officer Anthony Christie and dedicating an interchange in his memory and for other purposes.
Transportation.
Senate Resolution 217 by Senator Ligon III and others, a resolution creating the Senate Study Committee on Prescribing Patterns for antidepressants and other psychotropic medications and for other
Health
purposes.
and Human Services.
Senate Resolution 220 by Senator Thompson the 14th and others, a resolution recognizing Jerusalem as the capital of Israel and for other purposes.
Rules.
Senate Resolution 222 by Senator Cowers of the 46th and others, a resolution commending Taiwan for its relations with the United States and the state of Georgia and for other purposes.
Rules.
Mr. President, that concludes the order.
First reading and reference of House bills and resolutions.
House Resolution 164 by Representative Powell of the 171st and others, a resolution proposing an amendment to the Constitution so as to authorize the General Assembly to provide by general law for the dedication of revenues derived from fees or taxes to the public purpose for which such
Appropriations.
fees. House Resolution 165 by Representative Green, the 151st and others, a resolution authorizing the conveyance of certain state-owned real property owned in Chatham County, authorizing the conveyance of certain state-owned real property.
State institutions and property.
House Resolution 182 by Representative Green, the 151st, and others, a resolution authorizing the granting of non-exclusive easements for the construction, operation, and maintenance of facilities, utilities, roads.
State institutions and property.
Mr. President, that concludes the order.
Secretary will now read reports of standing committees.
Mr. President, Senate Committee on State Institutions and Property has had a consideration of the following legislation talking about the same back to the Senate for recommendation. Senate Bill 172 passed by substitute, sent by Senator Harbison of the 15th. Mr. President, Senate Committee on Health and Human Services has had a consideration of the following legislation talking about the same back to the Senate for recommendation. Senate Bill 71 do pass by substitute. House Bill 62 do pass, sent by Senator Watson of the 1st. Mr. President, Senate Committee on State and Local Government Operations has had a consideration of the following legislation instructing the board to send back to the Senate for recommendation. House Bill 159 to pass by Senator Kirk of the 13th. Mr. President, Senate Committee on Public Safety has had a consideration of the following legislation instructing the board to send back to the Senate for recommendation. Senate Bill 15 do pass by substitute, sent by Senator Albers of the 56th. Mr. President, Senate Committee on Retirement has had a consideration of the following legislation instructing the board to send back to the Senate for recommendation. Senate Bill 73 do pass, sent by Senator Black of the 8th. Mr. President, Senate Committee on Rules has had a consideration of final legislation to send back to the Senate for following recommendation. Senate Bill 18 do pass by substitute, sent by Senator Moles of the 53rd. Mr. President, Senate Committee on Education and Youth has had a consideration of following legislation to send back to the Senate for recommendation. Senate Bill 68 do pass, sent by Senator Martin of the 9th. And Mr. President, the Senate Committee on Economic Development and Tourism has had a consideration of following legislation to send back to the Senate for recommendation. Senate Bill 80 do pass. Senate Resolution 84 do pass. Sent by Senator Ginn of the 47th. Mr. President, that concludes the order.
Secretary will now read bills and resolutions for the second time.
Senate Bill 2 by Senator Gooch of the 51st and others, public utilities and public transportation, electric membership corporations and their affiliates, authorized broadband services provide. Senate Bill 32 by Senator Kirkpatrick of the 32nd and others, torts, conditions upon immunity from civil liability in instances of rendering emergency care provide. Senate Bill 99 by Senator Harper of the 7th and others, Department of Natural Resources online licensing system, allow applicants to make an anatomical gift provide. Senate Bill 106 by Senator Tillery of the 19th and others, Patients First Act. Mr. President, that concludes the order.
It's now time for a morning roll call. Are there any motions to excuse? Chair recognizes the senator from the 33rd.
Good morning, Mr. President. Thank you very much. I ask for unanimous consent to excuse the senator from the 38th for business outside the Capitol.
Without objection, the senator from the 38th is excused. The chair recognizes the senator from the 22nd.
Thank you, Mr. President. I ask for unanimous consent to excuse the senators from the 10th and the 39th for business outside of the Capitol.
Without objection, the senators from the 10th and the 39th are excused. Chair recognizes the senator from the 11th.
Request for unanimous consent to excuse the senator from the 25th.
Without objection, the senator from the 25th is excused. Are there any other motions to excuse? Chair recognizes the senator from the 2nd.
Mr. President, I would request unanimous consent to excuse the senator from the 10th.
Without objection, the senator from the 10th is excused. The chair recognizes the senator from the 28th.
Thank you, Mr. President. I ask for unanimous consent to excuse the senator from the 29th for business inside the Capitol.
Without objection, the senator from the 29th is excused. Secretary will call the roll of senators. Senators, signify your presence by voting the yea switch. The secretary will unlock the machine. It's now time for a morning devotional. All senators, please take your seats and cease audible conversations. Doorkeepers, please secure our doors. I'd like to recognize the senator from the 53rd to lead us in our pledge and introduce our chaplain of the day.
Thank you, Mr. President. If you join me in honoring our country, I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America, to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. And help me recognize our state. Thank you. I pledge allegiance to the Georgia flag and the principles for which it stands, wisdom, justice, and moderation. Thank you. I'm just so excited to be here, I couldn't remember what to say. But I do know about my good friend Jay Neal, and most of y'all know him. He is officially chaplain of the day, but I think I'd give him the title of preacher of the day. I've known Jay Neal for over 18 years. He and I have served Northwest Georgia together and have enjoyed working with him in that regard. He was in the Georgia House representing District 2 from 2005 to 2013. He resigned from the House in 2013 to accept an appointment by Governor Deal as the Executive Director of the state's Office of Transition. He is currently the Executive Director of Criminal Justice Coordination Council, and he is a pastor of Lakeview Westland Church in Rossville, Georgia. His wife's name is Gretchen. He has 2 kids and 7 grandchildren, and working on that baseball team, he needs 2 more to have 9. Would you please give your attention to Reverend Jay Neal?
Good morning. Thank you, Senator Mullis and Lieutenant Governor Duncan, for the invitation. And ladies and gentlemen of the Senate, it's an honor to share a few moments with you. As a former member of the General Assembly, I'm fully aware of the load that each of you carry, and I appreciate your commitment to the state of Georgia and to the constituents that you represent. I remember meeting with Senator Mullis prior to my decision to run for state representative, and I was told about this great part-time job. Little did I know the time commitment that I was about to make. I've often said that if I fully understood the demands of this position, I probably would have chosen not to run at that time. I appreciate the workload that you're under, the demands on your time, the pressures and often criticism that you face from your constituency, the frustrations of navigating through a political system that can be difficult and taking responsibilities. So the first thing is how much I appreciate you and the impact that you have on our state. One of the things that we may not always agree on the issues, but once we get together and develop strong out of those. Let me share just a simple illustration to demonstrate how
This time we'd like to introduce our Doctor of the Day, and I'll call on the Senator from the 37th to do so.
Thank you, Mr. President. It's my privilege to introduce the Doctor of the Day, Dr. James Tallman from Cobb County, Georgia, the great city of Marietta. Dr. Tallman has served several times as a Doctor of the Day at the Capitol, and he was here yesterday for Doctor's Day. He received his middle name Mason, as his father was a state representative in West Virginia and represented Mason County, West Virginia. He practiced medicine in Georgia for over 46 years, or has practiced, as a general practitioner, emergency room physician, and later as a diagnostic and interventional radiologist. He is a Vietnam veteran, protecting South Georgia from invasion by Florida and Alabama while serving at the Medical Corps Depot in Albany, Georgia. He greatly appreciates the medical education that the state of Georgia gave him at the Medical College of Georgia and Emory University. In addition to living in Marietta and Albany, he's lived in Augusta, Oxford, Atlanta, Decatur, and Athens, and says he has enjoyed living in all of them, but not quite as much as he has living in Marietta. I introduce to you my friend, Dr. James Tallman.
Thank you. It's an honor to be Physician of the Day at the Georgia State Legislature. I appreciate the opportunity to serve again. Thank you for all that you do for the health care of Georgians. As physicians, we appreciate the opportunity to partner with you to increase access to medical care for Georgians. Thank you again. Thank you.
Let's take a Are there any unanimous consents? Chair recognizes the Senator from the 25th.
Thank you, Mr. President. Pursuant to Senate Rule 317, I ask that for unanimous consent to have Senate Bill 136 withdrawn.
Will the Secretary read the caption on Senate Bill 136?
Senate Bill 136 by Senator Jones of the 25th and others, a bill entitled Enactment Chapter 10 of Title 15 of the OCGA relating to magistrate courts so as to remove statutory requirements for officers in the Executive Committee of the Council of Magistrate Court Judges to allow senior magistrates to serve as officers and on the Executive Committee of the Council of Magistrate Court Judges to remove provisions regarding the appointment and term of office of magistrates taking office prior to January 1st, 1985, and for other purposes. Mr. President, that concludes the order.
The Senator from the 25th has asked unanimous consent that Senate Resolution 136 be withdrawn. Is there objection? State your inquiry.
Mr. President, the motion to withdraw, what would the status of the bill be? Would it be removed from total record as not introduced? It's not being withdrawn and recommitted. What would be the posture of that bill in its recorded history?
The Senate would still appear in the records, but the Senate would not be able to take action. Is there objection? Hearing none, Senate Resolution 136 is withdrawn. Senate Bill. We have some special guests with us today that we would like to recognize. Will the Secretary read the resolution?
Senate Resolution 100 by Senators Dolezal of the 27th and others, a resolution recognizing and commending Deputy First Class Rod Reeves and for other purposes. Whereas Deputy First Class Rod Reeves serves with honor and distinction with the Forsyth County Sheriff's Office, whereas Deputy Reeves has triumphantly returned to service after recovering from a horrific car accident incurred in the line of duty, whereas he is highly regarded by the citizens of his community and by state and local government officials as a man of unquestioned integrity and dedication to the administration of justice and sound principles of law enforcement. Whereas it is abundantly fitting and proper that gratitude is expressed for the unique and often unheralded contributions of local law enforcement professionals on behalf of the citizens of the state. Now therefore be resolved by the Senate that the members of this body, recognizing and commend the care, courage, sympathy, and selfless dedication exhibited by Deputy First Class Rod Reeves in carrying out the difficult duties of his vocation and express their utmost appreciation for having so purely and truly defined for others the meaning of public servant. That concludes the order.
Is there objection to adoption of the resolution? The chair hears none, and the resolution is adopted. It's an honor for me to have the folks that protect myself and my family back home in our district to be up here on the rostrum with us. And I'd like to call on the senator from the 27th to introduce our special guest of the day.
Thank you, Mr. President. Good morning, members of the Senate. Here this morning to recognize Deputy Rod Reeves and his wife, Megan. If y'all could step forward, stand here with me. Deputy Reeves is a 16-year law enforcement veteran. He started serving in DeKalb County. After that, he served in Sandy Springs, where he was a member of the SWAT team. And then he reached the pinnacle of law enforcement when he was finally hired by the Forsyth County Sheriff's Department. In November 2017, Deputy Reeves was finishing a traffic stop when he got word that a drunk driver was headed his way. The next thing he knew, he was struck by the drunk driver while he was sitting in a squad car, and the drunk driver was going 88 miles an hour, crushed his vehicle, and he was airlifted with 4 crushed ribs and a shattered hip. The word back to the Sheriff's Department was, "Boss, it doesn't look good." Deputy Reeves went through 5 surgeries over the course of his recovery. He lost 45 pounds. He's since has worked hard to gain them back. And he says that what drove him was his 2-year-old son. He used to kiss his 2-year-old son's boo-boos and know that his son used to believe that the boo-boos would get better. But when Deputy Reeves was recovering from his hip replacement and his other surgeries, his 2-year-old son would kiss his boo-boos and wonder why Daddy's injuries were not getting better. In January, Deputy Reeves returned to duty with some new spare parts, but the same fighting spirit. It's an honor to stand today with those who wake up every day not knowing whether they're going to return home from work in the process of protecting us in our communities. And Megan, it's an honor to stand with you and as a representative of all of the spouses of law enforcement who go through the same questions on a daily basis. Deputy Reeves today is joined by the command staff of the Forsyth County Sheriff Department. Major Joe Perkins, Major Deanne Cash, Major Tom Patton, Chief Deputy Grady Sanford, who is no stranger to this body. He served on the Capitol Police. And for my money, the best sheriff in America, Sheriff Ron Freeman. Mr. Sheriff, will you share a few words with us, please?
Ladies and gentlemen of the Senate, thank you for recognizing this man. On behalf of the Forsyth County Sheriff's Office, I would just like to once again say thank you to tell you that it's not rare to see a hero in law enforcement, but it's rare to have the privilege to see one fight back, to do what this man did. And it was nothing short of miraculous what happened, that he survived, and it's been nothing short of miraculous to watch him fight his way back to the profession he loves and the community he serves. So thank you for recognizing him on behalf of our entire agency.
Ladies and gentlemen, would you please join me in thanking these fine men and women?
We have some additional special guests today with us today that we'd like to recognize. Will the Secretary read the resolution?
Senate Resolution 205 by Senator Jackson of the Second, a resolution recognizing February 21st, 2019 as Alpha Phi Alpha Day at the state capitol and for other purposes. Whereas Alpha Phi Alpha Fraternity Incorporated, the first intercollegiate Greek letter fraternity established for African American men, was founded at Cornell University in Ithaca, New York on December 4th, 1906. And whereas for 112 years, Alpha Phi Alpha Fraternity Incorporated has been a beacon of light to the community by staying true to its aims of manly deeds, scholarship, and love for all mankind. And whereas Alpha Phi Alpha Fraternity Incorporated has a membership of more than 80,000 college-educated men inducted into over 700 college and alumni chapters in the United States, Europe, Asia, and the Caribbean. And whereas it is abundantly fitting and proper that the outstanding contributions of this extraordinary fraternity be appropriately recognized. Now therefore be resolved by the Senate that the members of this body urge all citizens to recognize and applaud the contributions of Alpha Phi Alpha Fraternity, Inc. and the Georgia District and their commitment to making our communities a better place, and recognize February 21st, 2019 as Alpha Phi Alpha Day at the state capitol. That concludes the order.
Is there objection to the adoption of the resolution? The chair hears none, and the resolution is adopted. I'd like to call upon the senator from the 2nd to introduce our special guest today.
Good morning, members. I proudly stand here with the lady of the 44th, the lady of the 34th, and a gentleman of the 22nd to recognize Alpha Phi Alpha Day at the state capitol. But before I do that, I'd like to recognize the men of Alpha Chi Alpha in our gallery today. Will you please stand? Alpha Phi Alpha is the first intercollegiate Greek letter fraternity established for African American men. It was founded at Cornell University in upstate New York. Founded December the 4th, 1906 by Henry Cowles, Charles Chapman, Eugene Jones, George Kelly, and others, these men recognized the need for a strong bond of brotherhood among men of African American descent in this country. 112 years, Alpha Phi Alpha has been a beacon of light to our state, to our country, and our communities. Staying true to its aims of good deeds, scholarship, and love for all mankind. This is the 12th annual Alpha Phi Alpha Day at our state capitol, and we recognize these men for their outstanding community service. We recognize these men for their love for our community, and we recognize these men for our vision to help this state a better place. And to speak on behalf of Alpha Phi Alpha, I'd like to recognize my good friend from way back. We're down like 4 flat tires. My friend, Mr. Ellis Albright.
Good morning. To our Lieutenant Governor Duncan, members of the State Senate, Senator Lester Jackson, my Senator Harold Jones, and guests, I greet you on behalf of our 35th General President Everett B. Ward, Regional Vice President Kelsey L. Rushing, District Director Benny G. Hand, the leadership and over 2,500 brothers of the members of Alpha Phi Alpha Fraternity Incorporated who call Georgia home, drum majors for Alpha, leaders and servants of our communities. Today we have come to the Capitol, to these hallowed grounds, under the theme Alpha Advocacy and Actions defining our presence. We gather to advocate for full funding of our schools, an increase in the minimum wage, policing that is not discriminatory, ensuring that the right to vote is unencumbered and unrestricted, legislative districts that are fairly drawn, affordable health care is available for all citizens, sensible gun control, decriminalizing the use of marijuana, and reforming the cash bail system to ensure that they become more than just talking points. We come with inspirational dreams and insightful visions, with faith in a brighter tomorrow and a hope for a better future, where the color of one's skin will not be an issue, whether you are Republican, Democrat, conservative, moderate, progressive, or liberal will not be a concern, and where you represent your district with fairness and honesty, irrespective of whether it leans blue, red, or purple. A great Georgian and our fraternity brother said, faith is taking the first step, even when you don't see the whole staircase. We believe that the building of bridges that connect citizens of all race, creeds, and colors, instead of building walls of separation and boundaries of discrimination, will lead to a brighter future for all Georgians, regardless of the community in which they reside and the amount of wealth that they have accumulated. Again, on behalf of the brothers of the Georgia District, we thank you for this resolution, and we pray that God will continue to bless you and ensure that you make rules that ensure a fair, a just, and honorable Georgia for all citizens, regardless of race, creed, or color. Thank you.
We have some additional special guests with us today that we'd like to recognize. Will the Secretary read the resolution?
Senate Resolution 200 by Senator Miller of the 49th and others. A resolution recognizing February 21st, 2019 as Emergency Medical Services Recognition Day at the State Capitol and for other purposes. Whereas Georgia's emergency medical services system is celebrating its 45th year of service, and whereas the emergency medical services professionals of Georgia respond to almost 1 million calls for assistance annually, risking their lives on a daily basis to go to the aid of those in need. And whereas EMS personnel provide access to quality pre-hospital emergency care that dramatically improves the survival and recovery rate. And now therefore be resolved by the Senate that the members of this body commend the emergency medical services professionals of Georgia for the outstanding and courageous service to the state and recognize February 21st, 2019 as Emergency Medical Services Recognition Day at the State Capitol. That concludes the order.
Is there objection to adoption of the resolution? The chair hears none, and the resolution is adopted. I'd like to call upon our pro tem to introduce our special guests of the day.
Thank you, Mr. President. It gives me great pleasure to be here with you to introduce a fine group of gentlemen, ladies and gentlemen, actually. No ladies happen to be with us today, but they'll be with us this afternoon for the Georgia EMS Day. These folks make a difference in everyday life, in our quality of life, in the dependency that we have upon them for their response and for their help in our times of need. We are very, very grateful. I'd like to call upon my longtime family friend, Chad Black, to say a few words on behalf of this fine group.
Thank you, Senator Miller, Lieutenant Duncan. I have the privilege and pleasure to serve as the chairman for the Georgia Emergency Medical Services Association, and it's a very big honor for us to be able to come here today and be recognized. We appreciate the hard work that you do and know you have a very difficult job, but you've been very supportive of us. And to take time out of your day to recognize the thousands of EMTs and paramedics that we represent across this great state, it's very much appreciated. Thank you for your time.
Thank you, ladies and gentlemen. I would be remiss if I did not also speak to the fact that we have two other senators here with us this morning. Again, a tribute to their dedication and their appreciation of our EMS system. Thank you very much. Thank you, Mr. President.
We have some additional special guests with us today that we'd like to recognize. Will the Secretary read the resolution?
Senate Resolution 223 by Senator Mullis the 53rd, a resolution commending Major Tommy Bradford for his dedication and service to his community and for other purposes. Whereas Major Tommy Bradford has 25 years of law enforcement experience and serves with honor and distinction as Chief Deputy of the Dade County Sheriff's Department. Whereas he is an honest and dedicated public servant who strives for excellence in all of his endeavors and whose primary concern is the welfare and safety of the citizens of Dade County. And whereas on August 7, 2018, Major Bradford was attempting to deploy spike strips during a pursuit and was run over by the suspect vehicle, he sustained traumatic injuries, including the loss of his leg, a dislocated shoulder, a skull fracture, and many more minor injuries. And whereas, despite the loss of his leg, Major Bradford continues to serve Dade County, and his inspiring commitment to the welfare of others is an outstanding example of the positive effect law enforcement professionals have on the lives and well-being of others. And whereas it is abundantly fitting and proper that this outstanding man is commended and recognized for his valor and dedication to protecting and serving his community, now therefore be resolved by the Senate that the members of this body commend the care, courage, sympathy, and selfless dedication exhibited by Major Tommy Bradford in carrying out the difficult duties of his vocation and express their utmost appreciation for having so purely and truly defined for others the meaning of public servant. That concludes the order.
Is there objection to adoption of the resolution? The chair hears none, and the resolution is adopted. Like to call upon the senator from the 53rd to introduce our special guest of the day.
Thank you, Mr. President. Ladies and gentlemen, this is a special day that we get to honor a man who protects the people of Dade County and City of Trenton most of his life. Chief Deputy Major Tommy Bradford of Dade County Sheriff Department, a lifelong resident of Dade County, a county in which that I love serving. Husband to Mary Ann and father of 6, has worked in law enforcement for 25 years. He has served in many key operational and administrative roles over years, including sergeant position, a SORT officer, school resource officer, captain, and now chief deputy and major of the Dade County Sheriff Department. He is an honorable, honest, and dedicated public servant who strives for excellence in all the endeavors and all the primary concerns that he helps provide for the welfare and safety of the citizens of Dade County. He has extraordinary devotion for his duty, outstanding loyalty, and attention to detail in all of his duties, dedicated to the administration of the justice and sound principles of law enforcement that we all support here. On August 7th, 2018, Major Tommy Bradford was attempting to deploy spike strips during a pursuit in which he was ran over by the suspect's vehicle. And I understand the vehicle was going extremely fast. The injuries he sustained was traumatic, including the loss of his leg, dislocating his shoulder, a skull fracture, and many more minor injuries. His inspiration, commitment to the welfare of others is an outstanding example of the positive impact that he and other law enforcement personnel have on lives and the well-being of others. Commemorative and recognizable for this outstanding man, for his valor and dedication to protecting and serving his community. We commend the care and courage, sympathy, and self-dedication that Major Tommy Bradford has shown in his community. We express our utmost appreciation for his having so purely and truly defined for others the meaning of a public service. Would you help me honor Chief Deputy Major Tommy Bradford?
At this time, do any senators wish to rise on a point of personal privilege? Chair would like to recognize a senator from the 29th.
Thank you, Mr. President. Fellow senators and guests in the gallery, I rise today for my first time in the well to recognize the brave men and women throughout the state of Georgia that protect us each and every day. I stand here to recognize the men and women that wear the badge and drive the streets and highways of our state, the men and women that walk the hallways of our jails and prisons, those who go out to do two jobs every day. The first job is to serve, and the second job is to protect. Our state has thousands of men and women who go out each and every day not knowing if they're going to come home to their families. And their families sit there wondering if they're going to come home broken or if they're going to come home at all. And I'm proud and honored today to be a part of the largest organization of law enforcement officers in the United States of America and the strongest law enforcement organization in the state of Georgia. This organization is over 100 years old, and it started in Pittsburgh, Pennsylvania, when two law enforcement officers realized that for them to receive fair pay, fair benefits, a safe work environment, and due process when they're accused of wrongdoing, that they had to have an organization made up of their brothers and sisters that would stand shoulder to shoulder with them and walk through the valley of the shadow of death. And that organization is the Fraternal Order of Police. So I ask that each senator in the chamber and each guest recognize our friends today in the gallery, the leadership and membership of the Georgia Fraternal Order of Police. Mr. President, I yield the well.
Thank you, Senator. Chair would like to recognize a senator from the 14th.
Thank you, Mr. President, members of the Senate. Today I rise to recognize two very special guests that we have in the chamber with us. Traveled all the way here from a little town that we grew up in Big Sandy, Montana. And as some of you said, did we all graduate together? Well, I know both of them graduated, and some of you asked whether I graduated or not, so you could ask them. But back in the left corner here, we've got Reg and Marcy, and I just want to let them know how much we appreciate them being in the state of Georgia and spending a few dollars while they're here. With that, Mr. President, I yield the well.
Chair would like to recognize a senator from the 45th.
Thank you, Mr. President and members of the Senate. I appreciate your indulgence listening to me for just a minute. And I rise today to say thank you to all of the 55 senators that are in this room, and especially to express my gratitude to all the people who have written to me and sent me text messages that have helped me get through this week. It's been a very difficult week for me, and everybody in this room already knows, but the people watching on the viewing may not know, but it was the 10-year anniversary of the death of my son, who committed suicide 10 years ago. And unfortunately, I was here in the Senate, and I went home on a Friday afternoon. I thought I was going home to see about my dogs and their invisible fence. And I got home from session, and it's very difficult to talk about it, but I got home from session, and instead of finding my son there waiting on the man with the invisible fence company, I found my son, and my son was deceased. And he had taken a gun and shot himself in the head. He was 25 years old. And my decision as a mother was to survive, and I became very depressed. But I survived, and I only survived because of the people in this room. And I have to say thank you for helping save my life, because it's been my mission in the past 10 years to work with survivors of suicide and prevention of suicide. And I just want to say thank you to Vernon Keenan, the former director of the GBI, because he gave me strength, he gave me courage, because he said, Renee, if you don't talk about it, who is going to talk about it? And who can talk about it better than a mother who has survived or a parent who has survived this tragedy? So in Zach's honor, I rise, and I have been with the GBI. I have to say a very special thank you to Tribor Randall, who works for the GBI. The senator from Stone Mountain works with her on the Child Fatality Review Council. If you don't know what they do investigations and review the cases of why children less than 18-year-olds have died. One of the best things, you always try to make lemonade out of lemons. One of the best things we have is through the Department of Behavioral Health and Developmental Disabilities. We have a 1-800 number. I put it on your desk. I encourage the senators to put it in your telephone, either for you or your family members or for your constituents, most importantly, when they're in crisis. Because when you get that telephone call, oftentimes you don't know what to do. But these are professionals, social workers, licensed professional counselors, people who know how to deal with people in a crisis. And the very good thing, I'm so proud of our new governor, Governor Kemp, because he has developed an app. Because as we well know, kids don't like to use the telephone except to text. And this new app is about texting, and they can text when they're in crisis. I want to especially say thank you to the Board of Regents, because we've seen a higher incidence of young boys, especially when they're 18 to 22 years old, who could commit suicide on college campuses. We've had a few just right down the street at the Georgia Tech campus. So Governor Kemp, thank you very much. There were 48 children in 2018 who committed suicide. The youngest child we've had in this state who has committed suicide was 7 years old. That could be your grandchild, your great-grandchild. You don't know who it could be. Mental illness exists in every family. Whether you acknowledge it or not, unfortunately it exists. And with the high technology, the way the world just zooms around us this day, mental illness is much more prevalent. So I want to say thank you. Thank you to every one of you for helping me get through this. Thank you to the Lieutenant Governor. And that text, if you want to look at it, is my GCAL app. You can go on the Georgia State website. I would encourage you to go down the street, Peachtree Street, to the vendor where all these phone numbers come in. When you walk in the room, there's a big screen, television, media, and you see numbers coming in from all over the state, and they're queued up. These are your constituents who need help. And at any given time, when you walk in that room, there'll be 15 people queued up asking for help with behavioral health issues. I encourage you, they're our vendor. We pay for them. We're trying to help our people. I encourage you to go and visit them so that you know exactly what is happening with mental illness and behavioral health. We have great advocacy organizations. I want to say thank you to them. We're making great gains, but believe me, we could do much better with mental health, behavioral health. Thank you very much, and I yield the will.
Senator, I'd like to ask this chamber rise for a moment of silence in recognition of Zach, your son, and also those other families that are suffering from similar tragedy. Thank you. Chair would like to recognize the senator from the 50th.
Thank you, Mr. President. Members of the Senate, I would like to call your attention to the fact that today is Career and Technical Student Organization Day at the Capitol. Now, there are 9 CTSOs in our state, and I'm not going to try to mention all of them without any notes because I would forget one and their feelings would be hurt. But, Mr. Chairman, I'm not even going to mention the particular one that I worked with for a long period of time, but I think most of you know which one that is. At this time, we do have a good many of these young people, and Mr. President, I would say that I've already had 32 students from Forsyth Central High School and North Forsyth in my office at the same time this morning, so that was some kind of record for me. They were Skills USA students. I will give them a shout out, but I'd like for everyone in the gallery, all the students that we have with us, to please stand and be recognized at this time. When I looked at some of the facts on the CTSOs, one of the things that really impressed me is the fact that for all the students involved in career, technical, and agricultural education, for all the pathway completers, the graduation rate in our state is 96%. And that's 15% higher than the other high school students. So, of course, these are organizations that are near and dear to my heart. I appreciate the support that they receive here in the Senate and in the House, and I'd like to commend all these young people with us. You know, a lot of times we hear about new programs, we hear about the importance of soft skills. When we think about soft skills in education, we think about the ability to work with other people, the ability to communicate, the ability to have a job and be prompt, be at work on time, and be responsible. I really believe that there's not a better vehicle for soft skills in our schools in Georgia than these career and technical student organizations, and again, I salute you today.
Chair recognizes the senator from the 42nd.
Thank you, Mr. President. Colleagues, I rise this morning to call attention to the Georgia Domestic Violence Fatality Review Project, the 2018 annual report, which you all have on your desks this morning. I want to just briefly mention a few things that are contained therein and a few of the recommendations for policymakers that have been recommended by the authors, which are the Georgia Commission on Family Violence and the Georgia Coalition Against Domestic Violence. The Fatality Review Project has been at work since 2004, focused on the goal of reducing the number of domestic violence-related fatalities in our state. What do the numbers tell us? Statewide, during the past 5 years, at least 696 individuals died in domestic violence-related incidents in Georgia. These numbers include not only intimate partners, but also children, bystanders, and law enforcement responders killed as a result of these incidents. 71% of these individuals died by firearm, more than all of the other means combined. Where in Georgia do we have the highest percentage of domestic violence-related deaths? Over the past 5 years, the county that far and away had the highest proportion of domestic violence-related deaths was Sumter County. After that, we also had large ratios in Calhoun County, Twiggs County, Warren County, and Franklin County. So if you represent those areas, perk up your ears. There are some recommendations, as I mentioned, that are part of this report. Legislators are uniquely positioned to impact safety for victims and accountability for perpetrators of domestic violence. We should ensure that staffers in contact with constituents are aware of victim services organizations in our areas. The Georgia Domestic Violence Hotline number is 1-800-33-HAVEN. And we should all know that and make sure that our legislative assistants know that so that they can disseminate that number to folks that reach out to our offices with issues that may seem like they involve domestic violence. We should also identify and provide information from our local domestic violence program. We should enact proactive legislation to limit the known and convicted abusers' access to firearms. We have fallen behind our closest neighbors, including South Carolina and many others, in efforts to address the public safety issues that abusers that have possessions of firearms pose. A concerted effort needs to be made by this body to align our laws with the federal law, which limit abuser access to firearms. We would clarify law enforcement's authority to remove weapons and establish penalties for the possession of firearms by TPO recipients and those convicted of domestic violence misdemeanors. We should also close the boyfriend loophole by introducing protections for victims who have been in a dating relationship with their abuser, but who have not been married to, lived with, or had a child with the abuser. Colleagues, those are just a few of the really important recommendations and items of information contained within this year's Fatality Review Report. This is actually the last year that this particular report is going to be issued, so I do encourage you to take a look at it. I believe that there is legislation pending before our chambers here in the Senate and also over in the House that close the boyfriend loophole and also begin to work with law enforcement to enable them to restrict firearms access to those who have been convicted of domestic violence. And I look forward to continuing the conversation with all of you as we work towards passage of those pieces of legislation. Thank you, Mr. President. I yield the well.
Chair recognizes the senator from the 44th.
Thank you very much, Mr. President. I am just here to recognize some students from my district, Mount Zion High School. It's the ROTC group, and they were here this morning and presented a medal to our Lieutenant Governor. And we have still in the chamber, if you'll just raise your hand, Chief Master Sergeant Wayel Vasquez, and also Lieutenant Colonel Ariel Wallace. And one of their instructors, Mr. Lawrence Poindexter, ROTC instructor from Mount Zion High School. And Clayton County, #1, Mount Zion today, #1. Let's welcome them to the chamber. Raise your hand. Thank you. Mr. President, I yield the well.
Chair recognizes the senator from the 5th.
Thank you, Mr. President. Dear colleague, I'm here to remind some of you all, today is the International Mother Language Day, and this is a worldwide annual observation. It's the awareness of linguistic and cultural diversity that we have in order to promote that. It was first announced at the UNESCO in November 1999, but it was recognized by United Nations General Assembly in 2008 as the year of the international language. The idea to celebrate the International Mother Language Day was the initiative of Bangladesh. In Bangladesh, the February 21st is the anniversary day of the Bangladeshis that fought for the recognition of Bangla language. we're the only country in the world that we fought for the languages. In 1952, before I was even born, we fought for the language movement. The significance of this is to promote, to preserve the protection of all languages. So I just want you all to know that a lot of young folks don't know that we fight for a lot of different, for our voting rights, for civil rights, but we fought for our language right. So that's the significance of it. A lot of young folks don't know, and I think we should have some Bangladeshi folks over here. I want to recognize them for coming in the gallery. Thank you for coming in. And this is important to me because I was born, and Bengali is the fourth most languages in the world. A lot of people don't know that. Thank you, Senator. Thank you, Senator. Thank you, Chairman.
Thank you, Senator. You have a consent calendar of privileged resolutions before you. Does any senator wish to remove a resolution from the consent calendar? Is there objection to the adoption of the resolution on the consent calendar? The chair hears none, and the resolutions on the consent calendar are adopted. Are there any motions to withdraw and commit? Chair recognizes the senator from the 47th.
Thank you, Mr. President. I ask unanimous consent that Senate Bill 146 be withdrawn from the Committee on Economic Development and Tourism and be committed to the Committee on Regulated Industries and Utilities.
Will the Secretary read the Senate bill?
Senate Bill 146 by Senator Gannon of the 47th and others. A bill will be titled enacted in Title III of the OCGA relating to alcoholic beverages, so as to provide that retail packaged liquor stores may conduct tasting events at which samples of alcoholic beverages may be served, to provide for definitions, to provide for terms and conditions of tasting events, to provide for the remission of taxes applicable to tasting events, to provide for the promulgation of rules, and for other purposes. Mr. President, that concludes the order.
Senator, have both chairmen spoken and agreed upon it? The senator has asked for unanimous consent that Senate Bill 146 be withdrawn from the Committee on Economic Development and Tourism and be committed to the Committee on Regulated Industries and Utilities. Is there objection? Hearing none, Senate Bill 146 is referred to the Committee on Regulated Industries and Utilities. You have a consent calendar of local bills before you. Mr. Secretary, are there any objections filed to the bill on the local consent calendar?
Mr. President, there are no objections filed.
Is there objection to agreeing to the report of the Committee on the State and Local Government Operations, which is favorable to the passage of the bills on the local consent calendar? The chair hears none. The report of the committee is agreed to. The question is on the passage of the bills on the local consent calendar. All those in favor will vote yea. Opposed, nay. The Secretary will unlock the machine. On the passage of the bill, the yeas are 47, the nays are 0. The bills on the local consent calendar, having received the requisite constitutional majority, are therefore passed. We are now moving on to the rules calendar. Mr. Secretary, please read Senate Bill 1.
Senate Bill 1 by Senator Perrin of the 42nd and others, a bill entitled Enactment Title 40 of the OCGA relating to motor vehicles and traffic so as to provide for a penalty for hit and run accidents that result in serious injury, clarify a cross-reference relating to suspension of driver's licenses for other purposes. Mr. President, Senate Committee on Judiciary offers the following substitute to SB 1, a bill entitled Enactment Title 40 of the OCGA relating to motor vehicles and traffic so as to provide for a penalty for hit and run accidents that result in serious injury and for other purposes. Amendment 1 by Senator Liggino III and others offers the following amendment. Amend the Senate Committee on Judiciary substitute to Senate Bill 1 by replacing line 36 with the following. Person who resulted in bodily harm and leaves the scene of the. Amendment 2 by Senator Liggino III and others offers the following amendment. Amend the Senate Committee on Judiciary substitute to Senate Bill 1 by replacing line 4 with the following. To provide for exception, to provide for a short title, to provide for related matters, to repeal conflicting laws and for others, by replacing line 38 with the following. Serious injury by vehicle, provided, however, that there shall be no violation of this subsection if the parties involved in the accident exchange motor vehicle insurance information prior to leaving the scene of the accident. A person convicted of violating this subsection shall be guilty. Mr. President, that concludes the order.
I'd like to recognize the senator from the 42nd to speak to Senate Bill 1.
Thank you, Mr. President. Colleagues, I'm honored to present to you today Senate Bill 1, CJ's Law. This bill does one thing. It provides the option of enhanced penalties for a hit-and-run driver who causes a crash that he or she knows causes serious bodily injury and then flees the scene of an accident without stopping or rendering any aid. Current Georgia law assigns the same penalty range, 1 to 5 years, to drivers leaving the scene of a crash, resulting in serious injury without regard to whether they were the cause of the crash. This would change that so that the individual that caused the crash and flees could have a penalty range of 1 to 10 years instead. That's all the bill does. So it would give more flexibility for prosecutors depending on the fact pattern of the incident so that the most serious offender could have the most serious penalty. This bill arises out of the tragic case of Charlie Jones, or CJ, who was only 23 years old when he was hit by a car while walking in Cobb County in 2009. The driver of the car that struck CJ failed to stop, leaving him injured and helpless in the roadway, only to be struck multiple times by other vehicles. CJ's family, including his cousin Marcus Coleman, have worked tirelessly for justice in his case since that date. I also want to recognize Representative Abel Mabel Thomas, who's the original House sponsor of this legislation. We have prosecutors tell us that we have a large and growing problem with individuals striking, causing accidents, including those striking pedestrians, those on bicycles, those riding scooters, as we have increasing use of alternative forms of transportation and then fleeing the scene of an accident. So this bill does, as I said, only one thing. Instead of a 1 to 5 year range for the person that caused the accident and flees, it would have a 1 to 10 year range. It doesn't change anything else within our current hit and run statute or the duties of a person involved in an accident when they stop. It also, the bill also does not provide any sort of new mandatory minimums. It leaves complete discretion in the hands of the trial judge to assign anywhere within the 1 to 10 year range. But it does give our prosecutors more ability with a growing problem and a serious problem of people causing accidents, injuring people, and just continuing to go on to flee and drive away. And so we need to demonstrate within our laws that such behavior is very serious and unacceptable and treat it with the seriousness that it deserves. I'm happy to answer any questions, and then once we are through that, I'll discuss the amendments.
You have a couple of questions.
Great, yes.
Actually, no questions. Yep. He doesn't have a question. You have no questions.
Okay. Is it okay if I briefly address the amendments right now?
Yes,
So
absolutely.
some of the colleagues, some of the confusion about this, these amendments and amendments that we've made in committee are folks not understanding the way the statute is currently set up when it comes to when you have hit and run incidents and what your duties are. That is all already in the code. If people have a problem with the way we handle these incidents and what duties they think should arise upon an incident, then they actually have a problem with OCGA 40-6-270, which is hit and run, duty of driver to stop at or return to the scene of an accident. All this bill does is instead of a 1 to 5, it makes it 1 to 10. It doesn't change anything about what you need to do, what you need to exchange, what you need to prove, and when you might get, charged with one of these crimes. Anyone who is thinking of questions in that realm, they are thinking of things that already exist in our code, and so it is not amendment number 2. You could say this would provide that you would not have liability. There's no violation of the subsection if the parties in the accident exchange insurance information prior to leaving the scene of an accident. You could put this in here, but that would then be a change to how we treat hit and run in the code that I already mentioned that is incorporated by reference here on line 37 of our bill. These are your duties upon getting into such an accident. The driver of any vehicle involved in an accident resulting in injury shall immediately stop or stop close thereto and return forthwith. And here's what you have to do. You have to, number 1, give his or her name and address and the registration number of the vehicle he or she is driving. Number 2, upon request and if it is available, exhibit his or her operator's license to the person struck or the driver or occupant. Number 3, render to any person injured reasonable assistance, etc. Number 4, where the person injured in such accident is unconscious, appears deceased, or is otherwise unable to communicate, make every reasonable effort to ensure that emergency medical services and local law enforcement are contacted for the purpose of reporting the accident. Those are the things that you're required to do with any hit and run incident. So if we were going to add, for example, on top of exchanging names and information, exchanging insurance cards, that would be fine, but it really should go in chapter 40-6-270, not in this legislation, because all this legislation deals with is the penalty range, and it doesn't deal with anything else or what your duties are when you're involved in a hit and run incident. That is already in the code, so I think it really muddies the waters to add these extraneous things, and I oppose Amendment 2. Amendment 1, the standard throughout the code is knowingly, which means knowing or should have known. Again, if you're looking at my legislation in isolation of the rest of the code, you might have the misapprehension that knowingly is not already a part of it. Knowingly is already the standard in 40-6-270. So really, in this legislation, we don't need it to say knowingly, and we don't need it to say should have known, because again, that's already in the law. If we have one of them, we should have the other, because that's the standard. But if we're going to insist on, adding little things in isolation, then it wouldn't be the end of the universe to add new resulted in bodily harm. It's just silly because it's looking at this 4-line bill in isolation of the rest of the law. None of it is necessary. It's already there. So that's it, Mr. President.
Senator, do you yield for a question?
Yes, I do.
Chair recognizes the senator from the 53rd.
Thank you, Senator. I appreciate
There you are. Thank you.
your work on this issue, and of course, the personal life of the gentleman who lost his life. That's terrible. Let me give you this scenario, and then help me with this. If an unaware driver is going down a street, and there's this angry protest that has become violent, has spilled out to the road, and then she or he drives to that crowd and they start rocking the car and banging on the hood and making threats and hitting the windshield with whatever, and they take off and they hit somebody, maybe not aware that they've injured somebody, or maybe they're fearful that if they got out to check, they would lose their life. Does this bill have an exemption for that kind of scenario?
I believe you said they did not know that they injured somebody?
They may not know, they may know, or they don't know they injured, but they may be aware they hit somebody.
If they're not aware they hit somebody, then they would not be charged under this statute. There may be other
Okay, it's just a concern I have with
statutes
this
that,
issue.
you know,
All right, thank you.
you know, hopefully that sort of situation doesn't occur too often, but when it does, the state would have to prove they knew.
You have no more questions.
Thank you, Mr. President.
I'd like to
I yield the
recognize the author of both amendments, the senator from the 3rd, to speak to his amendments.
Thank you, Mr. President. If we'll look at amendment number 1, first what it does is it goes to line 36 and it removes the concept of that a person should have known that the accident results in bodily harm. And the author of the underlying bill is correct. It is a playoff of 40-6-270. And if you look at that bill, the concept of should have known is not found within it. Here's what it says. If such an accident is the proximate cause of a death or serious injury, any person knowingly failing to stop and comply is guilty of the hit and run. It doesn't say that the person should have known, and so by removing these bills that are the words should have known from the bill, we make it consistent with the underlying law of hit and run of 46-270. Now, with respect to item number 2, this is a common sense amendment, and the senator again is right in that 40-6-270 has some requirements for people to get out and give their registration and driver's license, but it says nothing about giving insurance. And we know that most people, when they get out or in an accident, if there doesn't appear to be an injury, they'll just, or the damage is not great, they'll just swap insurance cards and then they'll leave. But if you had that situation and maybe someone had a scrape on their head and then they swap insurance cards and leave, and later that person dies, well, you could have a problem there. You're getting pretty close to the lines of having a violation here. And this is just being offered as a common sense measure dealing with this very specific, serious penalty which could occur for people who, in good faith, believe that no one has been seriously injured or hurt. They give their insurance card and then they leave. Well, then they can have the assurance that they're not going to be facing some fairly significant charges later on. And so, Mr. President, unless there are any questions, I'll yield well, and I would ask for your support for these 2 amendments. Okay. Yes.
Do you yield for a question?
Yes, sir.
Recognize the senator from the 42nd.
Thank you. Will the gentleman yield?
Yes.
Senator, as you mentioned, and as I said, isn't it true that we really don't need knowingly or should have known because, as you just said, the underlying statute says knowingly?
Well, and to make your bill consistent with the underlying statute, that's why we're taking out the words should have known.
And I said, as I said, that was fine with me, but we don't need either.
Okay.
You have no more questions.
Thank you.
Chair recognizes the senator from the 35th to speak to the bill.
Thank you, Mr. President. Senators, as you may remember, last year, CJ's Law came before you. The original author was Abel Mabel Thomas, and I carried the bill here in this body. I carried it because I thought the bill really needed to pass. And also, I had a personal connection in knowing CJ.
and knowing his uncle Marcus Coleman. They were all friends with my two sons. My son that lost his life a few years before that to a drunk driver. And then CJ, walking across the street, gets hit, and then more and more cars hit him and took his life. So this bill is needed because when this happened, we were able to do research, and we found out that so many hit-and-run drivers exist in the state of Georgia. We have to do something. The law does not address everything that happens in this case. So as you know, last year it went through the process on the House side and passed. It came here, and we were able to pass it, but it was on the last day, and it had amendments, and it was different from the House side. So it never got to a conference committee because we ran out of time. So I hope that, again, you will vote for this bill. Please look at it. And we really need to save the people who are walking across the road, or the person who actually hits them. They need to be found guilty, in my opinion. So, Mr. President, I will yield the well unless there are questions.
You have no questions.
Thank you very much. I yield the well.
We will start to take up each individual amendment. There's two amendments. First, we'll take up amendment number 1. The question is on the adoption of the amendment number 1. Is there objection to the adoption of the amendment? Objection. All those in favor of the adoption of the amendment from the senator from the 3rd will rise, stand, and be counted. Reverse. The adoption of the amendment, the yeas are 35, the nays are 6, and the amendment is adopted. Now we'll take up amendment number 2. The question is on the adoption of amendment number 2. Is there objection to the adoption of the amendment? Objection. All those in favor of the adoption of the amendment from the senator from the 3rd will rise, stand, and be counted. Reverse. The adoption of the amendment, the yeas are 26, the nays are 21, and the amendment is adopted. The question is on the adoption of the committee substitute as amended. Is there objection to the adoption of the committee substitute as amended? Hearing none, the committee substitute is adopted as amended. Does any other senator wish to speak for or against the bill? The chair hears none, and the previous question is ordered. Is there objection to agreeing to the report of the committee which is favorable to the passage of the bill? The chair hears none, and the report of the committee is agreed to. Shall the main question be now put? Are there any objections? The chair hears none, and the main question is ordered. Shall this bill now pass by substitute? The question is on the passage of the bill by substitute. All those in favor of the bill will vote yea. Opposed, nay. The secretary will unlock the machine. Sorry about that. I had to do my job over here. Thanks for coming down, guys. Thank you, John. Appreciate it. Yeah, absolutely. Have a great day. Yes, sir. Next one's the budget, right? On the passage of the bill, the yeas are 50, the nays are 1. This bill, having received the requisite constitutional majority, is therefore passed by substitute. Secretary, please read House Bill 30.
House Bill 30 by Representative Ralston of the 7th and others. A bill to title an act to amend an act making and providing appropriations for the state fiscal year beginning July 1st, 2018 and ending June 30th, 2019, known as the General Appropriations Act, Act Number 1EX, approved November 17th, 2018, so as to make, provide, and change certain appropriations for the operation of the state government and for other purposes. Mr. President, Senate Appropriations Committee substitute to House Bill 30, a bill be titled an act to amend an act making and providing appropriations for the state fiscal year beginning July 1st, 2018 and ending June 30th, 2019, known as the General Appropriations Act and for other purposes. Mr. President, that concludes the order.
The chair would like to recognize our distinguished chairman of Appropriations to speak to House Bill 30.
Thank you very much, Mr. President, members of the Senate. First time I've been up here to see this green caution, this green light and red light and caution light, so we'll see how this goes. First of all, if you've got a budget, you've got a couple of things on your desk. Let me first of all tell you what you've got on your desk. The first thing you've got on your desk, of course, is the budget bill and a tracking document, and also you've got a handout. It looks something like this that gives you item number by item number all of the entries, the basic entries in the budget as well. As you look through the budget, you'll see a couple of things, and let me just tell you what those are in case you have a question. You'll see some what we call statewide changes, and that is an entry in every department, in every program that says something about self-insurance programs. It's basically the state is self-insured on liability insurance and other forms, workers' comp and other forms of insurance. We charge the department's premiums, and these premiums go up and down depending on our experience level. There is an increase in this amended budget, and you'll see that increase spread out throughout the different program areas all through the budget. The other thing I would point out to you is there are cuts that the House and Senate have made all through this budget based on what we would call start date adjustments. These are examination by our budget specialist analysts who tell us that a department which was funded for a certain number of positions didn't hire, or new positions or open positions, didn't hire them in a timely manner, or didn't hire them for a full year. So we realized those savings in savings of if they were hired in say September or October or January of this fiscal year, then they have savings for those months that they didn't utilize those personnel funds. We scoop those savings up, and that is one of the ways that we fund one-time entries in the budget. So when you see that we're spending money on something, it is because we have saved money in other areas. The revenue estimate, the total amount of the budget doesn't change. So for everything we've added, there's a cut somewhere that takes the place of that. So just thought I'd share that with you as well. There's a lot of information in this handout, and I hope you'll take the opportunity to look at it. Just as an overall view, let me just tell you that one of the things that this state is known for is very conservative budgeting. And the budget this year's amended budget with this both special session and this amended budget now totals $26.9 billion for the 10.5 million residents of the state of Georgia. It's built on a very conservative 3.3% state fund rate increase over the 18 collections. So for whatever view you might have, I will tell you that 3.3% increase is a very, very conservative rate. In fact, during the meeting of the economic advisors to the governor back in December, they predicted a 7% revenue growth for this year, 5% for next year. Whether those numbers will hold true or not, but they were all unanimous in those numbers as well. Inside this budget are a couple of big items that I feel like we ought to mention to you. Lottery proceeds is always important to us. Lottery proceeds, of course, finance the Hope Scholarship Program, the Hope Grant Program, and TCSG, and the pre-K program as well. There's an increase in the total funds in the lottery in this budget of 0.25%. In motor fuel taxes, something that has increased since we passed House Bill 170 a couple of years ago. This budget contains $1.895 billion in total transportation revenues at a little over $2 billion. Those of you who have been here a while remember when the total transportation budget was about $1 billion. So the residents of the state of Georgia have basically increased, have doubled the amount of funding that we're spending on transportation statewide. Now, the amended budget and our philosophy has been, and the Senate has led the way in of making the amended budget a true-up kind of a budget that basically trues up our formulas so that the utilization matches the funding. It contains the mid-year education adjustment that's based on the October and March counts that updates our FTE funding for schools. And what we normally do is have a pretty minimal number of new projects, and we really frown on new positions being funded in the amended budget. If there's one in there, there's probably a really good reason for it. If they're proposed, most of the time we cut those out. The headline additions in this budget that were listed, the big items are pretty much the ones that were proposed by the governor. And some of these, what I would call headline proposals, include, and I'll try to give you the number. They won't be in sequence, but I'll try to give you the number. And if you want to look it up in the budget, I won't give you a page number. I'll give you an item number, and you should be able to look it up. They're sequential in the budget. Item 162.1, of course, everybody's aware of the school security $69.4 million addition that's providing $30,000 to every school in the state for security. Item 63.2 is $8.4 million to fund the APEX program, which will provide support counselors for mental health services in high schools through Governor Kemp's proposals. There's also item 230.1, $5.6 million for hazardous waste cleanup. There's a list of projects out. EPD tells us that this will fully fund all of the projects that they need to be working on, and they even expect to even with all of this addition, they expect to have about $500,000 left over. So we're fully funding hazardous waste cleanup in the state. There's $35.7 million to reimburse for the property taxes that are lost under the Forest Land Protection Act. In your counties, if you're affected by that, then you've probably heard about that as time goes by. Items 154.1 and 154.2 is the $86.3 million. That's the K-12 midterm enrollment growth item and T&E pay scale growth as well. The Senate agreed with a number of items that were added by the House and the governor,
and then put in a few ads that were submitted by our senators either individually or through the Senate subcommittees. And I'll touch on those as we go through. One of the items the Senate added was item number 159.2, which is also in K-12 education, where the Senate added $500,000 for coding labs in middle schools in rural or low-wealth areas. There's a lot of success stories on previous funding of teaching coding to elementary and middle school kids. We think that's the wave of the future and something that we should support. Item 310.1 in higher education, the Senate added $2.08 million to dual enrollment and trued up the Hope Scholarship and the Zell Miller Scholarships. Every year, in the amended budget, we look at utilization of those scholarships, and we match those up with the funding, and some of them go up, some of them go down. We just true up what we call truing them up. Item 283.1, the Senate agreed with the governor's proposal of $326,000 to promote early literacy through a statewide children's digital library. Item 84.1, we agree with the governor and we added $14 million for statewide water planning, which continues to be extremely important. One of the protections in our arguments in the water battles with other states is that we are very successful at water planning, and the state continues to lead in that regard. Item 333.2, we agreed with the governor and the House to include $35 million for Chattahoochee Technical College to establish an aviation academy in Paulding County. Item 282.1, the Senate agreed to a $9.9 million add for Augusta Health System for pediatric and adult clinical radiation therapy, renovation and expansion projects. This is a machine that will be used in the pediatric treatment lab. 96.2 agrees with the House and adds $500,000 for Augusta University recruitment for basic science and clinical translational research in women's and childhood cancer. In healthcare, there's a total of $71.9 million in increases in state funds for Medicaid, and this is the existing Medicaid program. Just as an aside, as of this budget, Medicaid takes up about $3.2 billion in state funds, added to the $7.2 billion we receive in matching federal funds. We're now spending on the present Medicaid program about $10.5 billion. If you divide it by the number of people in the state, not taxpayers, but by the number of people in the state, my calculation is it's about $300 for every man, woman, and child that we're presently spending on Medicaid. 97.1, with the Senate agreed with the governor and the House and funded $9.3 million to Mercer University to establish a 4-year medical campus in Columbus. The Senate also added, through subcommittee, $250,000 to reduce the waiting list for Meals on Wheels. Meals on Wheels has a long waiting list. There's a pretty good size addition in the 20 budget. This will begin that, this will reduce that list a little bit, and then they will continue to be funded in the 20 budget. Very popular program statewide. Item 242.3, the Senate added $350,000 for an Alzheimer public awareness campaign. As you know, we have a program now in cooperation with Emory University for the screening of people statewide. We have 5 centers set up for the diagnosis and treatment, if not treatment, screening of individuals for early diagnosis of Alzheimer's. It's to help train doctors as well, primary practitioners in the communities, to recognize and to deal early treatment of people with Alzheimer's. This public awareness campaign is to help publicize the fact that you can now get, if you have suspicions that your family member has Alzheimer's, there's a program out there that you can access that will help gain that knowledge that you need. Item 88.2 in public safety, the Senate added $33,000 for Easter seals for the Champions for Children program to bring that total increase to $513,000. It's on a per child basis. Item 213.2, the Senate agreed to fund the GBI $751,000 in equipment and vehicles
to bring the cyber crime unit up to full operating capacity. We also added $1.3 million for 11 positions for the cyber crime unit. In 260.2, we disagreed with the House and added $263,000 for equipment and other one-time costs for the 20 additional positions that we've previously funded, including K-9 handlers for the criminal interdiction unit. Item 260.3, we again disagreed with the House and agreed with the governor to add back $349,000 for equipment for a 50-person trooper school. Item 213.4, the Senate also added to the GBI $350,000 in one-time funding for an app, for a computer app for school safety with the title See Something, Say Something. This funding will ensure that it will be anonymous use so that we believe that young people will really utilize it because they can be anonymous. Item 52.1, the House added $10 million for disaster relief for farmers in southwest Georgia. The Senate found another $8 million to bring that total to $18 million. In conference, if we can, our goal would be $20 million if that's possible. We'll be looking in conference to see if we can find any additional funds, but as it stands, the Senate version is $18 million. This will go to the loan program. 88.3, the Senate additionally added $2 million to assist hospitals that were damaged in the hurricane last fall in southwest Georgia. There's a list of those hospitals based on both the loss in usage and the loss or the number of beds in the hospital as well. I have that list if you'd like to see it. This will only apply to the federally designated areas and counties under 35,000 population. Mr. President, those are what I would consider the highlights. It certainly doesn't cover, it's not completely comprehensive, but it covers, I think, a number of items. I'd be happy at this time, maybe not happy, but I'd be willing to take questions and give you the best answer I can.
Mr. Chairman, you have no questions.
I urge your adoption of House Bill 30, the appropriations bill for amended budget for 2019. Thank you, Mr. President.
I'd like to recognize the senator from the 12th to speak to the bill.
Thank you, Mr. President. Thank you, Mr. Chairman of the 4th. Mr. Chairman, we so appreciate your dedication and tireless efforts to address the critical needs of Southwest Georgia's agricultural community. We are indeed thankful for the additional appropriations. These funds are desperately needed to assist hardworking Georgians called farmers. It's useful in helping them to rebuild their farms along with their lives and their families. Realistically, some will never farm again. Tornadoes, hurricanes, and floods have wreaked havoc and destroyed most of their income and most of their heritage. Thank you, Mr. Chairman of the 4th, and all of the legislators that have done so much to make Southwest Georgia whole again. Thank you, and I yield the well.
Thank you, Senator. Ready? The question is on the adoption of the committee substitute. Is there objection to the adoption of the committee substitute? Hearing none, the committee substitute is adopted. Does any other senator wish to speak for or against the bill? The chair hears none, and the previous question is ordered. Is there objection to agreeing to the report of the committee, which is favorable to the passage of the bill? The chair hears none, and the report of the committee is agreed to. Shall the main question be now put? Are there any objections? The chair hears none, and the main question is ordered. Shall this bill now pass by substitute? The question is on the passage of the bill by substitute. All those in favor of the bill will vote yea. Opposed, nay. The secretary will unlock the machine. Chair recognizes the senator from the 11th.
Parliamentary inquiry.
State your inquiry.
Is it not true that Senator for the 12th speaks for the Senator for the 13th and myself in her wishes of thanks to the body and Senator from the 4th?
I'm certain the senator knows of what he speaks. On the passage of the bill, the yeas are 53, the nays are 0. This bill, having received the requisite constitutional majority, is therefore passed by substitute. Mr. Secretary. Chair recognizes the senator from the 4th.
Mr. President, I move the Senate immediately transmit HB 30 to the House.
The senator has moved that we immediately transmit House Bill 30 to the House. Is there objection? Hearing none, the motion passes. Mr. Secretary, please read Senate Bill 72.
Senate Bill 72 by Senator Harper of the 7th and others, a bill entitled Enactment Chapter 1 of Title 27 of the OCGA, relating to general provisions relative to game and fish so as to remove a prohibition on hunting on wildlife management areas, change the date of effective rules and regulations of the Board of Natural Resources, to amend Part 1 of Article 1 of Chapter 3 Title 27 of the OCGA, relating to general provisions relative to hunting so as to provide for a regulation of hunting with air guns of not less than .30 caliber, to modify seasons and bag limits for deer, possum, and raccoon, and for other purposes. Amendment 1 by Senator Heath of 31st and others offers the following amendment. Amend Senate Bill 72 by inserting between raccoon and 2 on line 7 the following. Provide for the legalization of the use of silencers and suppressors for hunting in certain circumstances by replacing lines 40 through 53 as follows. Feral hogs and for purposes of this paragraph and for other purposes. Amendment 2 by Senator Hinson of the 41st offers the following amendment. Amend Senate Bill 72 by inserting after line 238 Part 3 of Article 4 of Chapter 11 of Title 16 related to carrying and possession of firearms as amended by revising paragraph 4 section Code Section 1611-125.1 as follows. Long gun means and for other purposes. Mr. President, that concludes the order.
Chair recognizes the senator from the 7th to speak to Senate Bill 72.
Thank you, Mr. President. Ladies and gentlemen of the Senate, Senate Bill 72 is a bill that is very similar to a bill that is passed out of this chamber in a couple of different forms last legislative session. So I will touch on everything in the bill, but I'll stress the things that are different between the versions that we passed last year and the version that is before you today. It does a couple of things in regards to changing the code, updating and codifying the DNR rules and regulations, making some changes in regards to the code that updates it, that aligns it with House Bill 208 that we passed a couple of years ago. All of that was in the bill last year. It also legalizes the use of air guns for hunting purposes in this state. So hunters in our state have another option to choose from whenever they decide to go participate in our state's greatest pastime. That was in the legislation last year as well that we passed out of this chamber more than once. It updates the feral hog code to bring it more in line with the deer code, and it also changes the term of conservation ranger to game warden throughout the code, and that's what's new to the bill. To bring our code up to date with what we refer to our men and women who serve in the Department of Natural Resources Law Enforcement Division. So, Mr. President, that's what the bill does. If there are no questions, I yield the will.
You have no questions.
I will really quick. There is one, the amendment number 1 I am in favor of from a senator from the 31st. I just wanted to make that known before I step away. Thank you, Mr. President.
I'd like to recognize the senator from the 31st to speak to his amendment, amendment number 1.
Thank you, Mr. President, members of the Senate. I just wanted to kind of explain Amendment Number 1 to you. Several years ago, we legalized the use of suppressors for hunting. There have been no issues with that, and what this amendment does is eliminate some remnants of the code before we legalize suppressors. So that's all this amendment is doing, and DNR is good with that, and pretty simple amendment, but I would urge your support. Be glad to answer any questions if there.
You have a question recognized as a senator from the 41st.
Senator Yield?
Yes, sir.
Senator, just to kind of clarify, primarily we're already allowed to hunt with suppressors, but there are two little changes, and correct me if I'm wrong, and I might be. One is that right now, if you hunt on somebody else's property with a suppressor, you have to have verifiable evidence that they gave you permission. And the second thing that you'll be changing is that you'll be able to hunt with a suppressor at night. Those things are still in this old code section, but your statement is correct that 99% of the time when you're hunting with a suppressor, that won't really be an issue, and that's presently allowed under state law.
That's correct. And in order to hunt on private property that is not your own, you have to have permission to do that anyway. So it's already covered. The other point I wanted to make about suppressors, I know some people have had some concern about it, but before you can purchase or possess a suppressor, you have to apply to the Bureau of Alcohol, Tobacco, Firearms, and Explosives, go through an extensive background check, and then pay a $200 tax. And then you've got to keep that license that you are given for that specific suppressor with you and with that suppressor wherever it's located. So, I mean, this suppressors moves this up to a very elevated standard, and that's maintained.
You have no more questions.
Thank you.
Chair recognizes the senator from the 41st, our minority leader, to speak to his amendment, Amendment Number 2.
Thank you, Mr. President, member of the Senate. Simple amendment. Presently under Georgia law, a firearm with an explosive you need a carry permit for. And we'll probably be discussing carry permits later in the session. But I think this is an oversight. We are authorizing another type of gun to be used that can bring down a deer humanely, therefore certainly could injure or kill a human being. This amendment, the only lines that are really applicable that are changes, most of it's restructuring, but line 16 to the end, that is, air gun is defined by this code section that you would need a carry permit for that weapon. So that if, and remember, the code section defines it as a 30 caliber weapon. So we're talking about 30 caliber weapons. It also secondarily mentions in this mine 0.46 or greater, so that's also bigger than a BB. We're not talking about BB guns. If we're talking about air guns, which are now using certain gases that are more compressible than air, like helium, and they have a much more explosive element involved, which can bring down a deer. So therefore, these weapons would need a carry permit if you need a carry permit for a similar rifle with an explosive charge. Yield for any questions if there are.
You have no questions.
Thank you.
Do I need to speak to it?
Chair recognizes the majority leader.
Mr. President, I move the previous question.
Is there objection for the motion made to move on to the previous question? No objection. Objection. Would you like to speak to the objection?
I'm going to talk. There we go.
Previous question is not debatable.
So I'm going to yield the well. Thank you.
Senator, would you like to speak to your objection?
a parliamentary inquiry on the motion. Brief parliamentary inquiry.
The previous question has been ordered on the bill and all the amendments. All those in favor of the motion will vote yea, opposed nay. The secretary will unlock the machine. Chair recognizes Senator from the 41st.
Mr. President, isn't it a sad day that we prevent debate and discussion of important matters before the public, and that we should vote no on this amendment?
It's for each and every senator to make their own opinion. On the motion, the yeas are 34, the nays are 19. The motion's prevailed, and the previous question is ordered. The question is now on amendment number 1. Is there objection to the adoption of the amendment? Objection. All those in favor of the adoption of the amendment from the senator from the 31st will rise, stand, and be counted. Reverse. The adoption of the amendment, the yeas are 31, the nays are 19, and the amendment is adopted. Chair recognizes the senator from the 31st.
Thank you, Mr. President. I would request a ruling on the germaneness of Amendment Number 2. The bill that this amendment seeks to amend is a bill dealing with hunting and fishing in Title 27. The amendment is dealing with the criminal code in Title 16, and I believe that would be non-germane, but defer to you, sir.
The Senate will suspend for a moment while we confer. The Senate will come back to order. With reference to amendment number 2, the chair has examined the amendment and listened to the arguments made and is prepared to rule. The amendment relates to guns in general, and the bill relates to hunting and fishing code. The chair finds that the amendment is not germane. The question is on the adoption. Is there objection to agreeing to the report of the committee which is favorable to the passage of the bill? Objection. Chair recognizes the Majority Leader.
I ask unanimous consent to withdraw the previous motion.
The Majority Leader has asked for unanimous consent to withdraw the previous motion. Is there objection? Previous question. Objection. The senator has moved that we remove the previous question. All those in favor signify by saying aye or voting aye. All those in favor stand, rise, and be counted. Reverse. The yeas are 42, the nays are 1. The previous question is withdrawn. Does any other senator wish to speak for or against the bill? Chair recognizes a senator from the 26th.
Mr. President, I was just going to suggest something to you all. I saw all y'all conferencing and going back and forth. And I would just suggest that out of abundance of caution, just let the members decide.
Does any other senator wish to speak for or against the bill? The chair hears none, and the previous question is ordered. Is there objection to agreeing to the report of the committee which is favorable to the passage of the bill? The chair hears none, and the report of the committee is agreed to. Shall the main question be now put? Are there any objections? The chair hears none, and the main question is ordered. Shall this bill now pass as amended? The question is on the passage of the bill as amended. All those in favor of the bill will vote yea, opposed nay. The secretary will unlock the machine. On the passage of the bill, the yeas are 38, the nays are 15. The bill having received the requisite constitutional majority is therefore passed as amended. Secretary will read Senate Bill 76.
Senate Bill 76 by Senator Black of the 8th and others, a bill titled an act to amend various provisions of the OCGA so as to redesignate veterinary technicians as veterinary nurses, to amend Chapter 50 of Title 43 of the OCGA relating to veterinarians and veterinary technicians so as to reenact the State Board of Veterinary Medicine and for other purposes. Mr. President, that concludes the order.
Chair recognizes the senator from the 8th.
Mr. President, I ask unanimous consent that Senate Bill 76 be recommitted to the Committee on Agriculture and Consumer Affairs.
The senator from the 8th has asked for unanimous consent to recommit Senate Bill 76 to the Committee on Agriculture and Consumer Affairs. Is there objection? Hearing none, Senate Bill 76 is referred to the Committee on Ag and Consumer Affairs. Chair would like to recognize our Majority Leader.
Mr. President, I move that the Senate stand adjourned until 10 o'clock on Friday, February 22nd.
Secretary, will you read the announcements?
Rules will meet upon adjournment in 450 of the Capitol. Government oversight has been canceled. Higher education will meet at 2 p.m. in 450 of the Capitol. Finance will meet at 3 p.m. in Mez 1. Insurance and labor will meet at 3 p.m. in 310 of the CLOB. Regulated industries and utilities will meet at 4 p.m. in 450 of the Capitol. Science and technology will meet at 4 p.m. in Mez 1. Judiciary will meet at 5 p.m. in 307 of the CLB, and transportation has been canceled. Mr. President, that concludes the order. All committees have been pushed back 1 hour.
Any other senators wish to make an announcement? Chair recognizes.
Thank you, Mr. President. Just a brief reminder, the lunch presentation today at Working Families Caucus in room 307 in the LOB will be on early childhood education, child care supports, and economic impact of child care challenges. You're welcome to join us for lunch, room 307 CLOB, and hope to see you there. The dinner is served as I speak. Thank you.
Chair recognizes the senator from the 35th.
Thank you, Mr. President. Senators, on Monday, we have Africa Diaspora Day. We've had it for many years, and on that day they have down on the second floor, we'll have tables with all of the resources that are in Africa. People will wear the African attires, and I invite all of you to wear something that is African. So when you see me with an African dress on, I hope that some of you will also wear your African attire on that day and go down and taste some of the cuisine of Africa. Thank you, Mr. President. That's on Monday, and I hope to see you all there. Thank you.
The Majority Leader has moved that the Senate stand adjourned until 10 a.m. on Friday, February 22nd, 2019. All those in favor of the motion signify by saying aye. Opposed, no. The ayes clearly have it, and the Senate stands in recess.